not as a refresher, but just, we said in the past that everything in your life has a starting point. Everything does. Your birth, your marriage, your relationships, everything had a starting point. And in that part of everything had a starting point, your faith, your belief system had a starting point. And it's kind of where we've been focusing, like for the last week and this week is, well, maybe the whole series, is what was that starting point in your faith and what has happened to it since then? Remember the first week, you may remember, we talked about the analogy of so many people when you're a little child associate your relationship with God to kind of like Santa Claus. You know, like, if I'm good, then I'll get what I want. And that's what God does. And we talked about how we kind of believe that only good things happen to good people and bad things don't happen. I mean, good things don't happen to bad people. We talked about how God hears all prayers and answers all prayers. And, you know, just basically, if I can behave, then God's going to be good to me. And that's kind of what we're taught when we're little children. And we grow up and we find out, well, I think I've been pretty good. Why does my life stink? You know, I see my next door neighbor, he's doing some really bad things and he's got a new car. And he just got a new boat. And how come I didn't? And I pray and I don't hear anything back, so what happened? And so we've stepped away. We step away from church. You might, when I say step away from church, you've stepped away from your faith. Because we all do it. We all do it to a point. We all do it when those things happen and they make us doubt. We all step back away. And part of all of this is, what we talked about, is the role of rules. The role of rules. Rules are part of every one of our faiths. Practically speaking, rules are the centerpiece of most all religious, let's put that in quotations, religious life. It doesn't matter where you are from, what church you grew up in, whether it was Jewish, Buddhist, whatever you grew up in, the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church, there is a set of rules. And different aspects of that expect you to follow the rules or not follow the rules. And what happens when you don't follow the rules? I've always been amazed when people have come to me about joining Journey Church, and I had one man especially just specifically say, so what are the rules I have to follow to be a member? And I thought, well, there's some, but there's not many. And for those of you that are part of the church, you know what this is. This is a book of discipline. And this is the rule book for the United Methodist Church. But you know, we get made fun of because of this book. When I say that, among other different faiths, because most everything in this book says you should. It doesn't say if you don't, you're going to hell. It says you should, or you may. You should do this, or you may do that. There's some places in here where it says that you will do this, and most of that is related to the structure of the church, about how different groups meet, things like that. But we get made fun of us. I was listening to a preacher talk about rules, and he was just saying the Methodists, they just throw all the rules out. They just kind of live willy-nilly. And it's not that we don't have suggestions, but we don't have to have firm rules. We leave it up to you to find in your faith what the rules are, somewhat. This is another book. I want to, if you haven't seen this book, this is United Methodist Questions, United Methodist Answers. It's like 77 questions in here of different ways of understanding beliefs. Great book. I want you to carry it. This is the book I talked to you about. I want you to have. Just in our conversation. So one's here for you. We have rules. Now there are some churches, if you don't follow the rules, they'll throw you out. I've been amazed just to watch the churches I've talked to you about this before. I've been amazed to see the churches to where if you've been divorced, you can't become a member of that church. There are some churches, if you've been divorced, well, you can come to church, but you can't hold an office. There are some churches to where if you're a member of this civic organization, you can't become a member of the church. And it just goes on and on and on and on. We live by the rules of different faiths. And this is something that we all wrestle with. We all wrestle with even who we are in the faith journey that we're on. We wrestle with the rules. What happens if I break the rules? What's going to happen? When I go to heaven, when I go up to whatever, however you vision that happening in the pearly gates, in the judgment day, am I going to be judged because I broke the rules? Or am I going to be judged on something else? And that's really what we're going to talk about today. But something else. Rules always assume a relationship. That means that in all circumstances in life where there are rules, you have to be in relationship with the person or the group or the organization making the rules. It comes down to church rules. If you're not a member of the church, you really don't care about their rules. But if you want to be a member of the church, you need to know the rules. Even if there are no rules, you need to know there's no rules. It's important for us to realize that in our faith, we have in our minds a set of rules. And I think if I could dig into each one of your brains, I would find that probably most of you have a different set of rules that you think are supposed to be upheld in your faith. A lot of similarities, but some differences. I want to look at a couple of models of rules, a couple of different ways of rules. One of them is called the family model. This is like what Betsy was talking about with the kids today, the family model of rules. When all of you, most of you I look around are parents, and when you had that little baby in your hand, you know, when the baby's born, and whether mom's in the bed with the baby or dad's holding the baby, and you're holding this baby, you don't look down at that little girl and say, you're not going to be able to date till you're 16. You don't make the rules when you got that little baby. Well, you know, there won't be any running in the house at all. You're not going to be able to have a cat or a dog, ever. When you're holding this baby, you don't make the rules. The first part of that is the relationship. You're mom or dad now. And you've got this baby. And that's the first. And then if you're a parent, you realize that these rules definitely come along. Of, yes, you have to hold my hand crossing the street. I don't want to. Yes, you've got to hold my hand crossing the street because we know that the little kid's going to run out in front of the traffic and get killed. And so to the child, they're saying, I don't want to hold your hand. You're restricting me. But we know if we don't do this, the kid's going to get hurt, chances are. So we have to set up these rules, and they have to be followed. But this is the family model. This is, you didn't do that because you're trying to torment the child. You're doing that because you love them. Get up to teenage years. Boy, there's a whole lot of rules. The rules become deeper and more solid because you've got a teenager who's trying to break them as much as they can. And they're trying to seek this freedom. But you got to have the rules. And that's the family model. It begins with a relationship and the rules are made in love. The next model is the club model. I think this is interesting. I sometimes think, I'll wait for that statement. The club model is where the rules are established up front. If you join a country club, you join the golf club, you join any organization, You become part of it. The rules are up front. We expect you to do this, and you can't do that. And if you don't like it, don't come be part of us. That's the rules in the club model. I have another one that I've put my own name on it. I think it's the good old boy and girl model. And this is where we live, most of us. We live in Amelia, Southside Virginia, I think especially has the good old boy and girl model. And this is the model where there are rules, but they don't tell you what they are. But they talk about you behind your back to your neighbor, saying that you broke the rules. Or they corner you at the food line and say, you know, I've said this example many times because I've heard it. Another person told me that it happened to them. They're walking in the food line and going down the aisle and somebody grabs them by the arm and says, you know, your daughter didn't come in Saturday night until 3 a.m. And you don't even know who that person is. Who are you? How do you know my daughter? Oh, I heard about it. I heard about it because my daughter was telling me, and it was all around the school. And this is the good old boy and girl model. I talk about you if you don't follow the rules. But you really don't know what the rules are. And so those are our three kind of models. But when we bring this back and incorporate that back into your faith, into the world of faith, the world of religion, is your faith more like the family model, the parent model, or is your faith more like the club model? Do you look at your faith as something that will help you be disciplined? Or do you look at your faith as something where you have to be compliant? You have to go with the rules. To me, it's an interesting question of which one are you? Do you follow the family model or do you follow the club model in your faith? When we look at rules and think about rules in faith, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Think Old Testament. Rules. 10 Commandments. Thank you. That's the first thing that comes to your mind, is the 10 Commandments. And to me, it's just amazing how many people put up those 10 Commandments and really feel that that is the set of rules that the church has to live by, that I have to live my life by. Or what? Or what? I've lived my entire life by the 10 Commandments, and so I surely have a place in heaven. Is that the way it goes? Last week, we talked about Abraham, if you remember. We talked about Abraham, and Abraham taught us one thing last week, in the whole talk we listened to, and that was Abraham's life was changed because he trusted God. He trusted God. And we're going to pick up kind of from there, where we talked about it last week, and move a little bit forward, and we're going to come up to the 10 Commandments. And so we're going to do it in about a few minutes, go 1,500 years. And so, you remember Abraham, God promised to Abraham that he would be the father of a nation, that he would have all of these children. And Abraham just waited, and waited, and waited, and he did have trust. Abraham did have some children. Abraham did have 2 sons. And if you remember the story of how that happened, Abraham's wife, Sarah, she just said, well, we can't, they were old, we can't have any kids, and you need an heir to assume your place, an heir to give everything we have to. So my handmaiden over here, Hagar, why don't you go with her and y'all can have a son together? And so some of you are saying, that's gross, or that's bad, but that's what they did. And so that's what he did. They went together and they had a son. And that son's name was Ishmael. of a sudden, the miracle, the promise that God gave to him, was he and Sarah, in their very old age, they had a child, and that child's name was Isaac. And so, they had 2 children, they had 2 sons. One was with Sarah, and one was with Hagar. Abraham died without seeing the promise of the great nation and all these descendants, but he had 2 sons. So if you know the tradition, the story, Ishmael went on to that farm. The Sarah and Ishmael left the group, left the household, and they went off, and that is the route to the Muslim faith. Isaac went on and had his own children. Isaac had a son named Jacob. And if you know some of the Bible stories, we watched this Bible story through VeggieTales. Yeah, people want to go watch VeggieTales? We've got some VeggieTales, and VeggieTales are so cute. If you haven't watched VeggieTales, they've only been around like 20 years probably. But watch some VeggieTales. We've got the one at home about Joseph and our little grandchildren. They know this story really well. Joseph had all these brothers, and he said that he was kind of said statements that he was better than them. Actually, he didn't really believe it, but anyway, they threw him down in a pit, and they finally sold him into slavery. And one way to translate it is he became the prime minister of Egypt. He was sold into the slavery, did so many miraculous things, and he moved up in status, and he became like next to the top in Egypt at the time. And so, he had 12 children. He had 12 sons. And those sons became the 12 tribes of Israel. And from there, the promise made to Abraham occurred. All of these people told him to go out and look in the look in the sky and see the stars. And he had that many descendants now among the 12 tribes of Israel. These tribes, they tried to do the best they could. They're in Egypt, and now, through the years, they became slaves in Egypt. And they were slaves in Egypt for 400 years. For 400 years. And they kept, we believe, from the scripture, we believe that they kept their faith. They kept their faith strong enough in those years to where they continuously prayed to God that God would set them free. So you think you don't get an answer to your prayer. You prayed last night and this morning it's not here. Well, they prayed 400 years to be set free. And then this guy named Moses comes along. And Moses, if you know the story, if you've watched a movie ever on the radio, on the TV, Moses goes to the Pharaoh and he says, "Let my people go." And the Pharaoh says, "No, I'm not going to do that." And so God works through Moses, and all these famines come, and the frogs come, and the flies come, and all these things, and it completely pretty much destroys Egypt's economic stability. Let my people go. So then the next thing that happens is just amazing. God takes these people that have been praying for 400 years, gathers them together, because God has overpowered Pharaoh. And Pharaoh says, "Go, be gone. Take all your stuff, take any of our stuff. Go and be gone." And Moses takes them out after 400 years. The book of Exodus tells this story of how they left and all the events that happened. But when you get to Exodus chapter 20, that's when the Ten Commandments start. And what I want you to understand is, we'll say it, but this relationship between the people and God had started back with Abraham. And it had come all this time later, and that relationship was there. And to the point when Moses is up on Mount Sinai, and he's receiving the 10 Commandments, and these are the words that the Scripture records that God says. We're going into Exodus 20, starting in the first verse. If you want to flip to something that you have, do so, but it'll be on the screen. It says, "And God spoke all these words. He said, I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord your God." It's not, "I am the Lord, and if you want me to be your God, that's okay." He says, "I am the Lord your God." We have a relationship. We have this thing going between me and you. It's already established. It's there. And then he goes on to say, "And who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." You know, we think, here he is, he's got these people out here, and he says, "I'm your God, you better listen to me, and you know, I'm just, if you promise to do this and this, you'll be okay. If you promise to follow the rules, everything's going to be just fine." But you know, that's not what he said. That's not what he said. He says, "I brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. I gave you that gift that you had been asking for 400 years. And what did I ask back from you in return? Nothing. Nothing." And you know what? In the back of their mind, well, let me say first, it's important for us to remember that the relationship was first before the rules. The relationship, God established with them this relationship before the rules and before he started talking about the 10 Commandments. But you know, when we read that, we think, well, yeah, I understand that. But for those people, they understood this much better than we do. Because there was something that happened that was just so very special. Remember last week we talked about Abraham and his trust. Something happened to these people to where their trust in God was so strong. Do you remember back, if you know the story, back when Moses was with Pharaoh, what was the one thing that pushed the Pharaoh so hard to let the people go? He lost his son. Do you remember in the story for the great Passover? The great Passover. God told the people, this is going to happen. The death is going to come and consume all the first male-born children. And if you want something to, if you don't want this to happen in your house, if you trust me enough, if you believe in me, if you're willing to sacrifice, slaughter this lamb and put the blood on the lintel over top of the door and maybe even down the sides. Do you trust me enough to follow those directions? Do you trust, as in the scripture, do you trust me enough to prepare the lamb just like this, to cook it just like this, and to eat it just like this, and to put the blood on the door? They did. Those that believed did. And all these thousands and thousands and thousands of Hebrews that fled Egypt with Moses, how many of those households didn't have their oldest son? And how many did? How many of those households wished that they had had enough trust in God to put the blood on the door, on the doorway? They knew about trust. The trust God. You know, that's really what we're talking about here today. When you stand in front of whoever's at the pearly gates, if there's pearly gates, It's not going to be a matter of, did you follow the rules? I gave you the 10 Commandments, did you follow them? No, I don't think that's going to be the question. I think the question's going to be, already known the answer. Did you trust me? Did you trust me with your life? Did you trust me when I told you to go? I'm still telling Carla she's going to hate you. Just playing with her. Did you trust me though when I told you to pick up your family and move out of that house? Did I trust you? Did you trust me when I told you that you need to give the last $20 out of your pocket to the guy who lives next door? Did you trust me when I told you that you need to get your life straight? There's things that you need to do. If you just listen to me, I'll help you get there. Or did you not trust me? That's going to be the question. As we go into the Exodus 20, and we go into the 10 Commandments, we're just going to look at the very first one. That's Exodus 20, verse 3. That is, you shall have no other gods before me. That was the first one. It wasn't a do, it wasn't a don't. Somewhat it wasn't. But he just said, you're going to trust me. All the rest of these are just guidelines. You're my children. You're my children. I want to hold your hand as you cross the street. But you first got to trust me. You're not going to trust some other God. This is me. I'm going to take your hand. And the rest of them are the do's and the don'ts. And it's just like every child you have. It's a terribly heartbreaking story when you hear somebody say, they pulled out of my hand and ran across the street and ran out and got hit by a car. You can't stop that. God can't stop us from running out in the street and getting hit by a car. He can't stop us from pulling away from all of these different, we can look at them as rules, but you know, it's things that are given in love. It's things that are given in love. The 10 Commandments were confirmation of, not a condition of, Israel's relationship with God. They were a time of just saying, yes, I trust you. You're my God. You're trying to help me, so yeah, I'm going to do these things. It wasn't, if you don't follow these, you're out. Because if all of you have been a parent, you know if it was possible to throw your kid out, you would have done it. So what? I think most of us would. But we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't throw our kids out. We love them. And so you've done something wrong. And yeah, it's going to cost me a whole lot of money to fix it. And yeah, I got to face my neighbors when I've got to get this straight. Or I got to face the people at church. Or I got to go to the school and talk to the principal. I got to go to the police department and talk to them. I got to hire a lawyer. But you don't love them any less. And so today I just wanted to say that with God, relationships precede the rules. The rules are not important as to relationship. The role of rules. The rules are a confirmation of, not a condition of, a relationship with God. These are the rules. These are the rules. It's a confirmation of your relationship with God, not a condition. We talked last week about Abraham's trust. We're talking this week about our trust. And so as we go back to those two models, which one of these two models fits your relationship with God? Are you in the family club? Are you in the family model? To where God the Father doesn't make rules to hurt you, but makes rules to help you? Are you in the club model where you got this whole set of rules and you have to follow them or you're out? That's the question for you today. Which one of those ways are you? Because you know, there's a whole lot of American Christians who feel the second way. If I don't follow the rules, I might be out. I've got to follow the rules to have my place in heaven. I've got to follow the rules. Or the rules first, or the relationship and trust first. That's for you to decide. Pray with me, please. Dear Father, we have come this day. We've come and we just think about this. Ask the question. Think about how it's might be still really deep inside of us, how we just think that if I don't follow the rules, you're not going to love me. If I don't follow the rules, then you won't listen to my prayers. If I don't follow the rules, then things are just not going to be right between me and you. And do we understand that the rules are there because you love us? And that you're going to love us no matter what? Do we trust? Do we trust that you will be and do and act as we think? Not as we think, Father, but as you promise in the Scriptures. Help us to understand. Help us to know. Please hear us now. Amen.